Stefan Mihailu here with power lawyer Joe Burns from the Power Law Firm, Holtzman Vogel. Joe, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you
It's always
doing?
good to see you. Former attorney with the New York State Board of Elections, you know, all things New York politics. And you penned an op-ed recently that appeared in the South Shore Press about Andrew Cuomo being the comeback kid. Joe, is this real? Like, is this legit, him running for and potentially winning the mayor's race in New York City?
Well, he's still got to make an announcement, and he's really under the gun at this point since petitions for mayor and for all public offices begin on February 25th. It sure seems like, number one, it seems like he's serious about it when you see what's coming out of his allies and what you hear out there that's getting reported in the press. But I think maybe more importantly, I think he's got a real shot to, number one, win the Democratic primary, and number two, be elected mayor of New York.
Because every poll that's coming out, you're seeing them and not connected to the Cuomo campaign. The New York Post, numerous outlets reported that independent polls show him, and correct me if I'm wrong, he is clearly the front runner for New York mayor.
That's right. And I think it's been surprising a lot of people, but it probably shouldn't surprise anybody in terms of his competitors, at least in the Democratic primary. He's the only one of them that's run statewide, and he's run statewide multiple times for governor and for attorney general. So people are familiar with the name. People are certainly familiar with his father's name as well, three-term governor of the state. But you look at some of the competitors. You have a couple state senators, one state assemblyman, all very progressive. One is a self-described socialist. They've never run. They really don't have much. They really don't have much pull or much recognition outside of their individual legislative districts. And then, of course, you have Eric Adams, the incumbent mayor, who is number one, unpopular. Number two, under indictment. Put aside whether we think those are legitimate charges or not, it's certainly not a good place to be politically when you're the incumbent mayor seeking re-election and you're under indictment.
Yeah, and obviously you're with Holtzman Vogel now, private law firm, but before you were the State Board of Elections. Can you explain for folks, because correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, Andrew Cuomo, can he not use his war chest for the race for mayor?
That's another great advantage I think the former governor has in this race is that he has a substantial war chest from his time as governor. And for the most part, there might be some exceptions, but for the most part, he can use that money in a race for New York City mayor. And of course, he could certainly add to that as well. And I think he proved in his time as governor to be a prodigious fundraiser. Now, maybe he won't have as easy of a time not being the incumbent to raise money, but he certainly has a lot of connections and connections people with deep pockets. For the other candidates who are reliant on the New York City Public Matching Funds program, and look, that's going to provide them a huge benefit if they can raise the qualifying funds. But they're essentially starting from scratch, whereas Cuomo is starting from a very good spot. I should also point out that Eric Adams, who relied on the program 4 years ago to be elected, Eric Adams so far has been denied public funds. Now that could change. His committee could come into compliance, and then that would make him eligible. But when that decision was made back in December, that was, I think, a serious blow to his reelection prospects, on top of all of his other problems.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them, to say the least. In your editorial for the South Shore Press, you talked about ranked choice voting and how that could impact the primary. For folks who are not familiar with that process or how you vote in that process, can you explain exactly what ranked choice voting is?
Yeah, so this will be the second mayoral election where ranked choice voting was used in the party primaries. It's not used in the general election, but it's used in the party primaries for New York City municipal office. The voters in New York City passed an amendment to the city charter that required ranked choice voting for special elections and for party primaries for municipal office. So essentially, what you'll have, if you're a voter in the Democratic primary, for instance, you'll have your selection of candidates, or many there might be that qualify for the ballot for mayor, and you will rank them your first choice, second choice, third choice, and on and on. What happens when those votes are tabulated by the New York City Board of Elections? You'll have different rounds of voting. And in each round, you will have, unless a candidate can get a majority of the vote, you will have through each round the candidate with the lowest number of votes dropped. Then that candidate's votes in the next round of voting will be reallocated based on how their voters rank the other candidates. That I think was really the key for Adams 4 years ago to being elected. It took a number of rounds for him to get to a majority of the vote, but he had an appeal. He ran 4 years ago as the more moderate, the more centrist candidate. Tried to build a coalition of more blue collar Democrats, black Democratic voters. Certainly, his appeal was in the outer boroughs and not so much in Manhattan. And in many respects, I think Cuomo is going to try to assemble that same coalition. As I already said, he's got a number of candidates already in the race who are progressives, who are socialists, and his appeal, like Adams 4 years ago, is going to be to more of those blue collar Democrats, moderate Democrats, black Democrats, and I think we've seen a poll today that shows that he actually is doing better among black Democratic voters than Eric Adams.
And so, last question for you, Joe. How do you think that ranked choice voting, that process of voting, how do you think that helps Andrew Cuomo in that primary?
He's probably going to be the best funded candidate. He's probably going to continue to be the best known candidate, and he's probably going to be the most noteworthy moderate centrist candidate in the race. And so I think all those add up to, if Adams continues, he's going to have some number of first round votes, but those voters, his voters, who I think in many respects are going to overlap with Cuomo's voters, they could rank Cuomo as their second choice. Even for some of the progressive candidates, well, their voters might have more of a familiarity with Andrew Cuomo, so maybe even they rank him as their second choice. So I doubt that any candidate would be able to get a majority of the vote when we're talking 7, 8 candidates maybe in the race. It'd be very difficult for anybody to get a majority of the vote on the first round. But as you go down, as you continue on with these rounds of voting, I think that it's going to be Cuomo again, like Adams 4 years ago. It's going to be Cuomo who has a very good shot at prevailing when it's all said and done.
Interesting, to say the least. Well, Joe Burns, attorney, Holtzman Vogel, as always, it's good to see you, and thank you for your take. And the website, southshorepress.com, and, of course, follow us on Twitter at SSP Newsroom. Joe, it's always good to see you and spend time with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.